support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
Never believe fully in anybody else's BS. I don't care if it's Roger Nish, the Pope, L. Ron Hubbard, Al Gore, George Bush, or I don't care who it is. Don't swallow all their belief system totally. Don't accept all of their bullshit, all their BS. The second rule is like unto the first. Don't believe totally in your own BS, which means that, as Bucky Fuller said, the universe consists of non-simultaneously apprehended events. Non-simultaneously. The universe consists of non-simultaneously apprehended events, which means any belief system or reality tunnel you've got right now is going to have to be revised and updated as you continue to apprehend new events later in time, not simultaneously. This is the natural functioning of the human brain. It's the way children's brains perform before they're wrecked by the school system. It's the way the minds of all great scientists and artists work. But once you have a belief system, everything that comes in either gets ignored if it doesn't fit the belief system, or it gets distorted enough so that it can fit into the belief system. You got to be continually revising your map of the world.
Yeah, well, that's a very valid point, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Down South Anomalies.
You know, it is hard to keep revising your map of the world sometimes.
Yeah,
it is.
We do it unconsciously half the time.
Yeah, it just depends. When we have a really, really strong belief in something, it's really hard to shift that. But, you know.
How are you, Aspasia?
I'm very well.
My extraordinary wife. My name's Jay Katz. You're part of Down South Anomalies. We are part of the extraordinary Untold Radio Network.
That we are.
And this is our 49th episode.
No.
And this is a very epiphanous episode. I could fall down this rabbit hole and never come back up.
This is a rabbit warren that if you go down into it, you may never come out of it.
And you know what? We're going back to the incredible anthology series, One Step Beyond, because we have uncovered a reasonable copy of the profound episode, The Sacred Mushroom. So you'll be living through that with us tonight or today or at lunchtime, wherever you are in the world.
When and where you're watching.
But the episode is entitled The Man Behind the Curtain, Andrija Puharich.
Yeah.
Now, Andrija Puharich is such a fascinating character. And, you know, did he dalliance mainstream media? He appeared, I think this is a scene from something like Ironside.
Oh, right, okay.
Where he appeared as himself.
Right, okay.
Which is fascinating.
That's weird, isn't it?
Well, he appeared in this One Step Beyond episode as himself as well.
Yes.
And look.
Because he wasn't an actor.
No, he wasn't an actor at all. He was a scientist. He was a medic. He was an investigator. Well, I mean, we still have yet to unveil exactly who he worked for, but he worked for many intelligence organizations attached to the US military. Anyway, we have to start off with, of course, we are broadcasting, we're transmitting from stolen land. It's about time this country all took the yes vote. And the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we want to pay our respects and appreciation to elders past, present, and emerging. And let's hope that that decision, that referendum, does change things. I mean, saying I'm sorry, it helps, but not enough. We need to go further.
You know what I always say? Don't tell me, show me.
Yeah, it's the action.
Telling is really easy. Saying things is really easy. It's the actions that are really, really difficult. But anyway.
Okay, well.
We'll see. I always live in hope.
Yes. Well, we are actually going to go to this episode, which I sought out through the classic TV series.
Yeah.
But you know what? The quality of these, every episode of this extraordinary anthology series that ran for many seasons pre the Twilight Zone, but was all based on real cases of anomalous experience. But there was one episode that was never included in the syndication package.
Yeah, exactly.
Because by the time syndication came around, the psilocybin extracted from the mushroom down in Mexico was now becoming part of the prohibited list.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is one of the most astounding pieces of television you'll ever come across.
Exactly.
Because you have the host literally tripping out on camera
Yeah.
under the auspices, the surveillance,
Mm-hmm.
the created controlled conditions of Dr. Andrija Puharich.
That's correct.
Now, if you need to, this disc also has the first appearance that we can track down
That's right.
of Bigfoot on television.
On TV,
which is Night of the Kill. That episode is included as well. But as it goes...
And you can get that from Amazon.
And you can also go up on YouTube and find some episodes that are virtually the same quality.
That's right.
Very poor quality.
Yeah,
we need to track down 16 mil prints of that.
Well, good luck.
We'll keep searching. We'll put the fillers out there. That's what we're doing now.
Yep.
All right. For episode 49, let's step into the life of an incredible researcher, medical and parapsychological. He was an inventor with, I believe, more than 200 patents registered with the Patent Office.
Yeah.
He was a physician and an author. He attended Northwestern University, and he was a student involved in the Armies Specialized Training Program.
Mm-hmm.
He had an undergraduate degree in philosophy
and
pre-medicine, and also became an MD at Northwestern. In 1953 and 55, he was a captain in the Army's Medical Corps. He was an incredible brain. He was also stationed at the highly suspect Maryland's Biological Warfare Division in the US. And you know as well as I do that there was a huge problem with the US forces after the Second World War because they still had a conscience and they weren't achieving the kill shot even when their lives were in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So there was a battle, as the incredible author William Sargent would tell us, for the mind. How do we take control of the human mind? And these are allegations. So I'm not going to make statements, but one of the allegations is that this gentleman, not just Sidney Gottlieb, Andrija Puharich, was a very vital part of the military's program for the battle of the human mind, and was possibly involved in MK Ultra experiments and was involved in projects like Project Monarch. He also brought to the West many interesting psychics, mediums, transmediums, and people like that for experimentation. And, you know, during that period in the 70s at Stanford Research Laboratories, there were extraordinary things achieved, and people need to actually go back and look at the data around investigating people that became ubiquitous on the world stage, like Yuri Geller.
Well, Yuri did the rounds of you know, all the Tonight shows.
That's right.
In the 70s. He was even out here in Australia on the Don Lane show.
Yeah.
So he was doing the circuit, which I find really bizarre. That's,
you know what I find bizarre too?
What's that?
That there was a moment in the US on the Johnny Carson show where Yuri Geller was set up by the arch skeptic that we know was part of television just as ubiquitously as Dr. Andrija Puharich, but also had links to the intelligence community.
Randi.
And that is James Randi. That's another allegation. I'm not making a direct statement there, but, you know.
You just made it.
We're very close to it. Anyway, so he brought over from Israel, Yuri Geller, who at that stage, very young and in the teenage years of Yuri Geller, he seemed to have some sort of attachment to Mossad when you do research. Anyway, he brought over the Dutch-born Peter Herkos.
Yeah.
And did you know that Peter Herkos was the only ever 2-part episode of One Step Beyond? They did a dramatized 2-part episode on the psychic abilities of Peter Herkos, not as well known as Yuri Geller.
No, he wasn't, but I remember his name and I remember his title, which was...
There's also another amazing contactee.
Should I pop the next one up?
Yeah. Pop that. Oh, no. We're not going there just yet.
Okay.
There's also another amazing title person there from quite an elite background, but a contactee for all purposes. And you really need to look into this lady. And the way to do that is to go to the incredible audio podcast called the source of life.
Yes.
There is an amazing episode on Greta Woodrew.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote a book on a slide of light in 1980. That sort of, that notion that we spoke about where Peter Lavender, actually discussed there was this incredible seance.
Yes.
In the 50s, conducted under the auspices again of Dr.
Puharich,
containing figures from industry, figures out of the military, and people have said even people like Gene Roddenberry
was there from entertainment.
Now the evidence is conflicting.
Yes,
and that Roddenberry might have been brought into the picture in the late 60s.
Yeah.
But when you look at Star Trek, the Council of Nine is evidently who they were speaking to.
Yeah, right.
9 ethereal extraterrestrial beings. And
so it was a bunch of people getting together and having a seance, but not a seance with dead people.
No, it was.
But they were contacting otherworldly beings.
Well, this happened in the early 50s with Puharich. He met this Hindu mystic called D.G. Vindog. And evidently, they went back to Puharich's lab, and this gentleman went into a trance.
Mr. Vindog.
Now, Puharich was an incredible hypnotist.
Yes, he was.
Hypnosis, again, is something you need to really do some research on, because we get a feeling that the military-industrial complex has actually been using hypnosis to their advantage for many years.
That's
and debunking it.
Yeah.
Like the double-sided messages.
By sending out people into the entertainment
that
industry
may have personal and psychological problems.
But that do stage magic, stage hypnosis.
Yes.
And so then it becomes like a parlor trick, like a fun thing that you go along to. Because I always hear a lot of people, even though their friend has just gone up on stage and been hypnotized to act like a chicken or to masturbate on stage, right? Which they wouldn't do in a pink fit. Yet when their friends question them and they tell them, I don't know, I didn't know what I was doing. I was totally, I don't even remember doing it. They still don't believe them.
Yeah.
So it's this incredulity of that hypnosis is a real thing.
Yes.
And it is a real thing. And I wouldn't allow anybody to put me under hypnosis.
Let's hear a little bit from the horse's mouth, which is Andrija Puharich.
Mr. Ed.
About...
Sorry.
Thank you, Aspasia. About the 9.
I'm trying to keep it light.
A little bit of background about the 9. Let's go.
Back in the early 50s, actually about 1950, I was in New York City. I lived in Maine, had a laboratory there, was doing animal work and human work, and Faraday cage and so on and so on. And I was young, I didn't know that much, a lot of brass, but not knowledge. So one of the things that happened was I was in New York City, and I went to a reception given by a very famous lady in parapsychology at that time named Mrs. Eileen Garrett. And she had, as a visiting guest from India, a nice little guy in a narrow jacket and so on, with glasses, and it could have been anybody's uncle. It was nothing conspicuous. And he was very quiet, and we met in the corner, and I asked him, what he does, and so on. He's from the University of Pune, and he's here on a peace mission, and so on and so on. And he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm studying parapsychology. I'm trying to find out the ultimate reaches of the mind so I can finally design a brain. I mean, that's where my head was in those days, right? And so he said, well, we must get together. I said, how long are you going to be in the country? Oh, he said, I'll be here for about 6 months, and maybe I'll get a renewal. So I said, fine, I'll get together with you. Well, I left them, and other events intervened. 6 months went by, a year went by, and every once in a while I think, gee, maybe I'd call him up, but I didn't. So one day I was up in upper Westchester County area visiting with the former Vice President of the United States. Henry Wallace was a good friend of mine. We did a lot of agricultural experiments together. And we got stuck a little bit on the statistics of an experiment we were running, so I missed the train I was going to take back to New York City. And I missed it by about 2 hours, and I did have an appointment in New York City. So he rushed me to the nearest town, which was Pleasantville, New York, known for Reader's Digest, put me on a train there, and I got on the train, and I sat down, kind of running all day, you know. And the last guy gets on the train, he comes late, and this is Dr. Vina. He sits next to me, he says, oh, he says, time for us, you know, the Indians talk a little high-pitched voice, and say, it's time we ought to get together, right? I said, I guess so, we've been caught up with. Make a long story short, I invited him up to my laboratory in Maine, which is near Rockland, and he came in by plane. One of my colleagues had picked him up. He walked into the house, which is a very famous Stanford White place, huge, and walked into the library and sat down without giving us any warning. Went into trance and started speaking. We are 9 principles and forces, personalities. We wish, and we plan this to the ultimate, blah, 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 blah. And they start telling us about who they were and the history, and if they were interested in helping us to further evolution. Okay, that's how it all got started. And so we got excited about this because it seemed like very high quality information, particularly the mathematics, which some of it to this day we have not solved, I might add, almost 30 years later. And I then began to learn about the big problem of peace and danger of nuclear war, and Dr. Vina took me down to Washington and taught me how to meditate on the whole congressional hall, and how to calm their feelings of the president, blah, blah, blah. I went through this whole training period for about a year.
Now, that's from the 80s.
Yeah, right.
And
that's Puharich recanting how
Dr.
he got
Vindog.
onto the Council of Nine. Is that right?
Yeah, and that was Dr. Vindog. And you know what? It all seemed to be happenstance.
Mm-hmm.
But years later, Puharich would say that this mystic had never gone into a trance state before.
Right.
So the moment he walked into the house, he fell into that trance state and then started to articulate about the Council of Nine, these 9 ethereal beings that actually are there to look over Earth.
Right.
And it was all about peace. And this
Not
went
doing a good
on
job.
for decades,
Right.
Aspasia.
Yeah.
Absolute decades.
So which one?
And,
that one there? Or?
No, just go to that one there, but don't put it on yet, please. All right.
Okay.
You're not supposed to be saying those things to me.
Okay.
You're supposed to just roll to them. Do you know what I mean? Where are we getting? We need to get smooth with this.
We can't
I love
do
you so
smooth.
deeply.
We can't do smooth.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And all that information went on year in, year out.
Mm.
Now, you've got the Defense Department there. You've got members of industry there. In the end, they're all having these secret meetings. They were traveling the world. They were doing this stuff in Israel. They were doing it in Europe.
Everywhere.
They were doing it in the States.
Mm-hmm.
It's phenomenal what was going on here.
Yeah.
And this whole notion of, like, at the moment, we're seeing the whistleblowers on Congress entertain these exotic, esoteric theories.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, right at the beginning, post-Second World War.
Oh, yeah. This stuff was already happening.
Puharich is the marker that this is happening big time.
Yeah.
Let's go now to the surgeon with the rusty knife.
Oh, yeah.
This is an incredible story.
Mm-hmm.
And this, again, Puharich was on a worldwide quest, I'd say, paid for by U.S. intelligence. Another allegation.
He was seeking these people out.
He was seeking these people out and bringing them to the States, testing them, and then putting them out there on the world stage.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, after decades and decades of research, they stated that the trouble with psychic phenomena, because he was trying to harness it as a military weapon. The trouble with it, it wasn't directly repeatable phenomena.
It's not every time. It's not on tap.
But maybe there is one case down in South America, and unfortunately, this gentleman died in a car accident.
Yes.
Argo, let's have a look at this and be prepared. This, you take the kiddies out of the room. This is one of those images.
This is the they called him the surgeon with the rusty knife.
Yes, of course they did. And here's an image of Puharich with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here is the book. Please go and search the book out. It is fascinating. Here's the copy that Lachlan loaned us on that book. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the most incredible story. And at the same time, this gentleman was showing signs of telepathy.
Yep.
But let's go to the horse's mouth yet again, Aspasia,
Yeah.
and hear from Puharich the whole notion of Argo.
I first ran into Arigo in 1962. Strangely enough, I was in Brazil. I was doing some consulting work for NASA at the time, and their big problem was how the hell are we going to communicate with astronauts when they're out around Saturn? It'll take about 12 minutes. You say hello here, and it takes 12 minutes to come all the way back to get an answer. So we got the idea that we should try to train astronauts to use telepathy and so on in case of an emergency. And this was a major program. It was submitted, presented, and so on. And one of the parts of the puzzle was what does gravity-free situation do to somebody out in space. At that time, believe it or not, we didn't know a damn thing about what would happen to human beings under gravity-free conditions. So I'd heard about a guy in Brazil near Campinas, which is near Sao Paulo, who was able to levitate pianos and tables and all sorts of stuff, and we figured that's a good start to get a handle on anti-gravity. So I went down there with a whole bunch of equipment and some colleagues, and what happened was that, strangely enough, this fellow was nice enough by himself and was willing to work with us, was in the hands of a bunch of spiritualists, and they're very anti-scientific, to put it bluntly, and they didn't want me to mess around with them. So I was really frustrated and disappointed, and I went to Rio then, and went to see a friend of mine who used to be my professor of Greek at Northwestern University, and was now the head of a Portland cement company in Rio. And I told him about my problem, and he said, well, he didn't know anything about, anybody else who could levitate, but he knew a doctor who was into spiritualistic things. If I talked to him, I'd find out maybe what I could investigate since I was there, had the equipment and so on. So I went to see this doctor, a very lovely guy, Dr. Davis, and he said, there's a guy called Arigo who is about 200 miles from here, and what he does is he operates on people with a knife that he doesn't clean, no antiseptic procedure is used, and he'll stick the knife in the eye, and he'll go zip like this and take out a cataract and put the lens in your hand, and he cuts people open and stretches the skin apart and takes out the guts and chops out tumors and puts it all together. And I said, come on, who are you kidding me? I never encountered this type of phenomenon at that point in my life. Then, make a long story short, I did go to this place called Congonhas de Campo, and sure enough, there was a real guy there called Arigo, who worked in a postal office all day I think it was from 8 to 4, that was their hours. And then about 5 o'clock, he would go around the corner to a little set of empty rooms that some local spiritualist church people set up for him, and people would come by the hundreds. And he would sit at a table like this, and they'd come down the line, he'd take one look at them, and he'd give the diagnosis, and he's incredibly accurate in his diagnosis, no matter what it was, leukemia, brain tumor, polyps, etc., etc. And then he would write out either a prescription, which was modern medical drugs, but used in ways that we never knew anything about. Like, in those days, we never heard of megavitamins, but he was prescribing megavitamins for certain types of leukemia. And he was very successful in curing leukemia. And then if the patient needed an operation, he would just pick up his knife and ask the person to drop their pants right in front of everybody, or pull up their shirt and carve them open, whatever had to be taken out. And it was absolutely astounding, but I couldn't believe my eyes as I watched it. I'm trained as a medical man. I can't go for this kind of funky, crazy stuff. I could see his reaction. He knows what I was talking about. He violated every principle of surgery, okay? I mean, it was unbelievable. And then he'd take the same knife and wipe it off on his shirt and go to the next You got to see the movie and then you don't believe it. Anyway, finally I got desperate. I said, I got to resolve it. That's fighting myself, but I didn't realize it. So I said, I got a little fat tumor here on my arm. I said, would you mind just cutting it out? He said, sure. So before I could turn to my cameraman to, get the shot quick, he grabbed my arm and he said, you can look at it. I said, no, I think I'll watch the cameraman. So I'm trying to give him signals what to do. And so I turned my head briefly to tell the guy, do this, do that. And I looked down, and there's a bleeding hole there, and there's a fat tumor in my hand about this size. And I said, geez, I got gypped, no pain. I didn't feel any pain. I expected pain, right? But anything I did, so I said, okay, I didn't have the pain. He somehow faked me out. My attention was diverted. I said to myself, it's got to get infected. I've got to get septicemia out of this, the way he did it, and blah, blah, blah. So I decided not to put a bandage on anything, just leave it open, and it closed up very quickly, you know, in a matter of a couple of hours. And to make a long story short, I didn't develop septicemia. So finally, I believed this guy was for real. So I came back year after year with medical men.
As you can see there, that story of Argo is really worth investigating, and it really sounds like this man was doing the job of a major hospital, one man, after his postal work each day.
No wonder he died in a car accident.
Anyway, fascinating person. Let's go to some original footage shot by Puharich, which is part of his documentation of his studies. Just below there, get ready, get prepared.
So Andrija Puharich was actually attached to Stanford as well, wasn't he? He was doing a lot of his research.
To everyone.
Yeah, but like major research facilities.
He was meeting with vice president.
I know.
He was working for NASA because instead of worrying about the time delay, they wanted to see if astronauts could telepathically communicate with Earth. These are wild, esoteric notions. Pop down to Argo there. Get prepared for this. This is what you call classical psychic surgery. It's all silent too, so our mic's on there. They can hear us during this. That's okay. Yep, that's fine. Let's keep it rolling. This is what looks to me. Yes, I know. I said that.
Okay.
This is they can hear you. I said that. We know.
Sorry.
This is Super 8 footage. I'd say. Now look at this. This is part of this surgeon's procedure in removing tumors. And you know what? This is all direct in front of camera. It's not hiding it from the camera. It's not having swabs around or anything.
Yeah, right.
So what is going on here?
Jeez. Whoa.
Hang in there. Hang in there.
What's coming out? That's a big pimple.
So these are really interesting films in terms of like he's definitely piercing the skin and removing stuff from inside the body. So, I mean, gee whiz.
So do you know how long he Puharich worked with him, or did he work with
him?
For
a number of years before he died.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So he was able to do extraordinary documentation.
Okay, yeah.
And
so he's not just lancing a pimple or anything like that there. It was major stuff.
Well, you know what? Go and look at that documentation. Go and look at that research. And that will show you that there was more to this than meets the eye. I think after this, just like the Mondokane series, there were many, many fraudulent psychic surgeons.
Yeah.
But this man literally introduced this notion, especially to the West.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure it was occurring beforehand, but it was a real intuitive. And as he said, even the prescriptions he was writing out
at the time
seemed to have an incredible recovery and healing rate attached to them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Interesting.
All right. Well, you can go up online and you can actually watch both of those on YouTube.
What's it under?
Just punch in Argo.
Oh, Argo. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Now let's get a little bit of background. Get rid of that.
All right. I don't want to see.
Let's get a little bit of background on Puharich and Yuri Geller. Just move down, please, to the next video there.
Yeah, here we go. Yuri.
Thank you.
Dr. Andrija Puharich was the first American scientist to study Geller.
Geller, from friends in Israel who know about my interest in parapsychology, and I've always kind of had the reputation of finding unusual people and studying them rather than studying, kind of normal populations. And so I went over to look at Uri Geller I believe I got to Israel August 17, 1971. And I spent a week with him. And he was very cooperative, I must say. And I set up a little laboratory in Tel Aviv that friends let me have part and got equipment. And in a week, I was quite convinced that Uri really was extraordinary. And from then on, I started organizing a major research program around Uri, which, you know, is
still going on.
Fairly mature now, yeah.
Was that the first time you'd ever seen psychokinesis?
No, I'd actually seen different levels of psychokinesis. In 1953, I saw under laboratory conditions materialization of objects. I was studying a Hindu by the name of Dr. Vinod at that time. And subsequently, I saw dematerialization of physical objects. And then in Brazil in 63, I saw kind of unusual manipulation of tumors and things in people through a healer called Arigo. So I saw a lot of this before, but I'd never actually seen it so repeatable and controllable as in Uri. That was really the difference.
Well, under some circumstances, still Uri has trouble with these powers, like on a Johnny Carson show, or when he feels that someone's trying to set a trap for him, or if he feels hostility.
I don't mean
sometimes it'll.
I don't mean to imply he has total control now. He's
but
just more repeatable than anybody had ever seen. And those factors you cite are true. If he gets nervous, uptight in front of an audience like Johnny Carson, or if people are hostile, he figures, why in the hell should I show you anything? He really doesn't care, and he doesn't do it. And he'll never show anything to a magician that publicly, but in Israel, I used to follow him around in his public shows, particularly in the Army. And he'd be on the same as we have here called USO shows. And they'd have magicians and singers and, you know, the chippy and the band and the whole trip. And Uri would work with the magicians. We're bumping along on trucks in the Sinai Desert. And Uri was like a little kid being amazed at the magician's tricks. And then Uri would show what he does to the magician. The magician was absolutely aghast because he knew it wasn't a trick, you know. But that was, you know, informal, friendly circumstances. But in this country, Uri's been under such severe attack by the magicians that they're on his verboten list. He won't show them anything.
All right, thank you very much for that, Asper. We're back on the air. Listen, the interesting thing there, and the supposition that I didn't complete, was that James Randi, who was an arch skeptic and a stage magician with links into the intelligence community, allegedly, you know, the Johnny Carson program, and you know what my feeling is about that, it's Orwellian doublespeak. And that is what you're doing, is you're doing a form of fishy flirting. You're actually bringing out this person that is shown before that they have incredible psychic abilities, and then you're showing them again when they're unable to do it. So what's happening there? Is this a bit of a way that you actually scoop people up from the common humanity? That you actually have psychics write in and go, well, I've got that experience, and now they end up as another test subject under the auspices of Puharich. And at the same time, even though the public is led to believe there's something to these powers, they become incredibly skeptical.
That's right.
When they're
when
not repeatable.
Work. And when you've got somebody out like Randy going on there to debunk them every time.
So here's a nice family portrait.
Because when he got Yuri Geller, he actually had Yuri living in his house for like 2.5 years. 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
So it wasn't just, you know, he got him, he did a few tests on him and then cut them loose.
And one of his daughters was not very happy about that because they felt that, and one of his second wife, I think, may have felt that Yuri was exploiting him. But I think when it came to Puharich, who was exploiting whom?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and what we should run through here too is probably the books that will tell, if you want to go and actually get all the information about the nine, these books that were released by Stuart Holroyd there in the early 80s are the books to look at.
Right. Okay.
But, you know.
So these are all the messages that the Council of Nine were giving.
Not all of them. Well, of course, because the Council of Nine, as far as I'm concerned, will probably still go on today.
Wow.
Behind the
closed
curtain.
door. Closed doors.
And as you can see, Puharich wrote extensively. 200 patents registered. numerous books, numerous research papers.
Yeah.
But I think what is in the public domain is virtually the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what must be in the classified world dealing with Puharich.
Yeah.
So what we've got here is the story we're coming to that's the bulk of the episode today, which is one of the most unique and profound moments that have ever occurred on mainstream television.
That it is.
And I'd suggest today would have a problem going on air itself. You know, it may be
mind you, with this resurgence now of looking into
the Wojciech Bereza has spoken to us about.
Yeah. So looking at mushrooms and psychedelics and stuff as with this microdosing thing for people with mental health issues, and the research that's going on with that, it mightn't be so bad as it was, say, like 10 years ago. All
right. So listen, bear with us. It is really worth taking a look at this entire episode.
Absolutely.
And now, as part of episode 49 on Down South Anomalies, we're going to step back in time to what we believe is in public domain. So legally, we all own it. And this is the most controversial episode of the 50s and 60s ever streamed on mainstream TV. You'll see the host and creator of the series actually ingest this mushroom and literally start to have enhanced psychic abilities. And this is what the intelligence community was searching for.
This member of the mushroom family, this fungus, is for the moment known only as X. It was discovered barely weeks ago growing in a remote rainforest. Science has not yet given it a name, for science knows scarcely anything about it. But it is felt that X might have one remarkable quality, that it stimulates extrasensory perception, enabling the mind to become telepathic and clairvoyant. Now, that's a rather large claim. Is it true or false? The answer to that question took us on a unique and distant journey. We're in Mexico, thousands of miles from our Hollywood sound stages in a place called Mitla, on the very edge of civilization. There are no actors, there's no script. For this psychic report can only be recorded at the moment it happens. Here in the plaza of the kings of Zapotec, here in the antiquity of Mexico, we begin a search whose ending, at this very moment of filming, we do not know. We are searching for something far older than these ruins, which, if found, could hurtle an ordinary man infinitely beyond his five senses. And now the first step beyond. The first step is a faltering one. We wait day after day for perfect flying weather, for the only way to reach our goal, the inaccessible village of Juquila, is by light plane over trackless mountains. Has he come back yet?
No.
Well, keep your fingers crossed. This lovely hacienda at the foot of the Dombach Mountains has been here a little longer than we have, but not much. From here, weather permitting, our chartered plane will fly us to a remote mountain village to look for, of all things, a mushroom. But a very strange mushroom indeed, with powers beyond belief. And here are the mushroom hunters, as improbable a group as you will find anywhere. For instance, this is Dr. Barbara Brown, brilliant neuropharmacologist of the University of California at Los Angeles. With her is David Gray, one of the last kahunas of Hawaii, a spiritual leader whose line goes back 900 years and whose quest for knowledge beyond the world of materialism has led him everywhere in the world. And now here, and here, with friend, is Jeffrey Smith, a distinguished professor of philosophy and humanities at Stanford University. And now, and mighty important, is our translator, William Upson, a missionary who has lived among the people of our remote village for the last 9 years, and the only man in the world who speaks their language.
The pilot says he'll be ready soon, John.
And last, our forever optimistic, Dr. Andrija Puharich, who wrote the astounding book, The Sacred Mushroom. Dr. Puharich's book brought us here in the first place, and in it, he explains how the mushroom seems to have an incredible effect on the power of extrasensory perception.
Incredible is the word. We're here for some very specific purposes. We want to know why these people here in Mexico have kept this rite so secret for so many centuries. But I would say that our prime mission is to explore and examine the biochemicals present in these new mushrooms and find out if they can be of any benefit in this problem of mental disease.
What Dr. Puharich hasn't told you, it is not all as simple as it sounds. The last time he was here, looking for the mushroom, a man was shot.
And shot at.
And another man was driven out of his mind.
For a while?
El piloto dice que ya. In English, dice que ya means the pilot said, now. The shadows of our two small planes fall on rainforests which hide villages where the 20th century does not exist. And that's the landing strip, chopped by hand out of a mountainside. Missionaries can bring the word of God to this lost world. As we approach, the pilot warns us to grab hold of something and hang on. A sudden gust of wind could smash us against the mountain or plunge us into the abyss below. At last, we are in the village of Hukila, slogging through mud. Each of us with an odd sense that all the clocks have stopped ticking. We've brought television cameras to people who've never even heard of radio, who've never seen a telephone, an electric light, who've never heard of aspirin, let alone penicillin. But perhaps the sacred mushroom has given them a psychic insight far beyond our deepest explorations. It breaks up to go about its various investigations. Dr. Brown and a missionary nurse named Dean Duggan go looking for the mushroom, guarded by armed soldiers because in the past months, shots have been fired, machetes have been flashed, and mushroom hunters who came before us have been murdered. Dr. Puharich and missionary Upson begin searching the town for a brujo, a priest of the mushroom cult. But everywhere they go, an iron curtain of silence comes clanging down. Amid much shaking of the head and wagging of the finger, everyone emphatically denies the existence of a mushroom cult. And it is made very clear that if this is why we have come to Hukila, we are not welcome. Our search seems hopeless until Dr. Puharich gets an idea that might help us push open an ancient door. Bill Upson is sent through the village announcing that a free medical clinic is open to one and all. Within minutes, the first patient appears. A little Chitino Indian with a lot of aches and a lot of pains. And then they come in droves. All of them humble. All of them hopeful. All of them grateful. Finally, the mother of a child whom Dr. Puharich has treated timidly suggests that she might help. Kindness and a bottle of vitamins have worked a magic of their own. Sometime tonight, we will have a visitor. Thanks to the help of the sick child's mother, secret arrangements are made, and we are guided to this hidden place to wait. But it is almost midnight before the brujo appears. He has practiced the secret and all but forbidden rites of the sacred mushroom for decades. Rites passed on from father to son for perhaps 4,000 years. But of course, he has never performed before such an audience or a camera. Our scientists have prepared test questions to evaluate the brujo's extrasensory perception. But he insists on one condition, to achieve spiritual union, they also must eat the mushroom. However, in the interest of detached scientific observation, he agrees that Dr. Brown does not have to take the mushroom. The rites begin. A strangely aromatic root is burned. Inhaled. The brujo murmurs incantations in Chitina, a language unknown anywhere else on this earth. As our group waits for the mushroom to take effect, Bill Upson questions the brujo. Because of the circumstances, the sound is, of course, far from perfect.
I just asked him when we would see something, when something would happen. And he held up his hand to indicate that he didn't want to talk at this particular time.
And then silence again as we wait. And then, oddly enough, the first sound we hear as the chemical in the mushroom takes effect is laughter. The brujo has just told of an amusing moment from Bill's childhood in Indiana. Indiana, a place the brujo does not even know exists. Now, each of the group tests the extrasensory powers of the brujo. Sometimes he is accurate, sometimes he is not.
Well, to brighten the eyes, the whole rabbit will brighten the eyes.
What?
Oh, it's perfect.
This means clairvoyance, right?
He's
Clairvoyance.
The following is one moment when he is startlingly correct. Suddenly he turns to Dr. Brown, whom of course he has never seen or heard of before.
Very good.
No, but I had to eat it. To eat my brother. You're still sick. You're sick in the chest. Your heart. Your heart is sick.
Can you ask more specific? No, let's try to get it pinpoint.
Heart rate.
Without a moment's hesitation, he has accurately diagnosed a personal illness that only Dr. Brown knows about. Our next experience with the brujo and the sacred mushroom comes quickly and unexpectedly. And this time it has nothing to do with scientific investigation. Since it is now common knowledge that we have already witnessed the rite, we are allowed to come along to see a second priest at work, a man named Macedonia, who agreed to take the mushroom and listen to the villagers' problem.
He said his burro was stolen, and he wants to know where to find it.
In this village of Hukila, the theft of a burro, a man's most important possession, his donkey, is second only to murder.
He said 3 men are involved.
Macedonia hardly paused a moment before he named the thieves.
Gustavo said he was going to take the 3 of them to jail tomorrow. But Don Macedonia warned him not to go near the house of Juan and Pedro because they would kill him, but to look for it in the house of Jose.
We go with the villager through a valley, across fields, past other villages to the exact spot where Macedonia said the burro would be. And here indeed it is, its identifying brand clearly marked on the burro's flank. Now perhaps we can understand, more or less, why for 4,000 years, and from one civilization to the next, the sacred mushroom has endured. We have been given a practical demonstration of how it works in the daily lives of this primitive people. 3 weeks have passed, and we're a long way from our remote mountain village of Hukila in Mexico. We're also a long way from the secret rites of the sacred mushroom cult. But our search for the truth about the mushroom, that is, the truth as we understand it, is far from over. These men are our technical crew who have come with me from Los Angeles to help us continue our search. We've come to the home and laboratory of Dr. Andrija Puharich in Northern California. For me, personally, this next step beyond may be a rather large one. This is part of the laboratory and study of Dr. Puharich. Here among his solid and sound books of orthodox medicine, there are also other books. They are written in French, in Spanish, in English. Here's one that says, Mushrooms, Russia, and History. They're written in Syrian, Japanese, all the languages of the world. And they're all concerned with one thing, the same thing, the riddle of the sacred mushroom. Now, when we were in Mexico, the brujo who discovered the stolen burro might have been coincidence. And the other brujo who told Dr. Barbara Brown about her past illness might have made a wild guess. But today, we should be able to prove the case for or against the mushroom, the sacred mushroom, with quite a lot more accuracy.
All set now, John.
Are those the mushrooms you brought back from Mexico?
Yes.
Andre, how many people have you tested since you've been back?
You'll be number 26.
What about the results?
Encouraging. The average of the group as a whole, and the series is quite small, you understand, shows evidence for extrasensory perception after taking the mushrooms.
Well, I'm ready. Better than I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be.
Well, not quite yet. We have to do some control tests first to see if you have any ESP before you take the mushroom.
Oh, I see.
And these will be done with cards, pictures, and books.
I see.
Now, you just sit still there.
Who knows, I might turn out to be a great big psychic without anybody's help from anything, huh? Mushrooms? Where are you?
I'll be with you. Oh, excuse me. Now, John, you take your left hand and bring it in here on this first block. There's a row of 10 blocks by you. You bring your right hand over, and you scan this far row, and you remain sensitive to any impressions, and when you think you're over the card that matches the one your left hand is on, you pick it up and move it opposite that card.
I see. It's like tall buildings in Chicago or New York or something like that. Well, what'd I do? Tall buildings in Chicago. That's not well. How'd I do with the rest of the
Well, got your scores added up. On this test, you got 5 hits out of 50. On the book test here, you got 1 out of 16, and you got nothing on the pictures. This is a chance score and shows.
That shows that despite 3 years with our show, I have what they would call practically no extrasensory perception at all.
That's what the test.
Well, what do we do now?
Now to eat the mushroom.
All right, I'm ready. Maybe that'll improve me. Which ones are we going to eat? You have so many here, Andre. Which one is mine?
These are for you. These are. Chew them well when you ingest. Not bad, are they?
Tastes just like mushrooms.
And one more for you.
Oh, dry. All right. What now?
Now we'll lie you down on the bed.
What for?
We'll do some physical testing before the effects of the mushroom take hold.
Like what? Like what effects?
You'll find out. Well, it's been about 20 minutes since you had the mushroom, John. How do you feel?
Fine. I feel strong. Sort of. You know, it's kind of hard to... strong. A sense of... kind of sense of well-being. Is that...
Yes. Some people feel that way. Let's try something. I want you to stand right up here in front of this light. Yes, close your eyes and tell me what you see. Lower your head a little bit. A little more. Now.
Now I see it. I see so many things I can't tell you. Can't you slow it?
Slow it?
Now I see but I see so many colors that are go.
Are they pretty?
In geometric signs that now it's like great things. They're magnificent. That's what they are. They're magnificent. I have never been so aware of color. It makes me quite dizzy. I feel like I would like to dive into the middle of it.
Well, we'll try the card test again.
Now.
All right, same way. Start with your left hand and try to find the one in this row.
Distinct impression of like the dunes of a desert or like half hoops on that way behind the other.
That's pretty close, John. Want to try another one?
Please. It has a great deal of, it has something, a power, like noise. I don't know how to translate that into a picture. It seems to have that noise and speed. There's a face looking this way and another face is looking up that way.
That's pretty good. Would you like to take a look and see what it's like? Amazing, isn't it?
Holy mackerel, that really is. Andre, before you tell me anything about the score, let me tell you something. That I did feel something sort of profound. When touching the pictures, touching the cards, I felt something. I don't know how I did, but the sensation.
Well, John, I can tell you it wasn't a delusion on your part because your card scores were 12 hits out of 50, which are significant for ESP. You got 3 out of 16 of the page numbers on the book. And, of course, most intriguing of all was your work with the pictures. You got 6 adequate descriptions out of 8 pictures.
It's a marvelous sensation. You know, Andre, I think I understand a little why for so many centuries they have called this mushroom sacred. Now our mushroom hunters are reassembled here in our studio. Dr. Brown, was our search worth it?
Yes, I think so. The chemicals in the mushrooms, I think, will offer us another tool by which we can explore the mechanisms and the capabilities of the mind of man. And that's both sensory and extrasensory.
What about you, Professor Smith?
Well, John, the more I experience of life in its ordinary and extraordinary aspects, the more I feel like a wide-eyed child reaching for knowledge and life. As for the mushroom, it took me out into worlds I didn't believe existed, far beyond ordinary perception. And yet, even today, they're as real and as important to my everyday life as anything I've experienced.
Dr. Puharich?
During our stay in Hukila, I witnessed quite a number of cases of extrasensory perception by the Brujos, some of which we could not film, as you know, John. These, in addition to the ones we did film, and the work which we have done since our return, convinces me that the mushroom contains a chemical which is most promising for the further investigation of extrasensory perception.
When this program began, the question was, were the claims for the mushroom true or false? Well, for those of us who made the journey, the answer is true.
There we are.
Just remove that screen, please.
Okay, got it.
It's a bit black at the end. And we apologize there for the lack of sync and the quality.
Well,
you can go up onto YouTube and find that episode. You can also purchase this disc via Amazon, which has the first appearance of Bigfoot in the episode Night of the Kill, and has that episode, The Sacred Mushroom.
Yeah.
Do you know what? When I was doing research on this Aspersia, I found, even on Wikipedia, that they had deceived the public about the ending there, saying that it showed no extrasensory, no change whatsoever.
Who wrote that?
But there we are in a controlled environment for a television episode in the very early 60s, proving in a way.
Well, obviously, what was his name? Newland?
Yes.
Yeah. The director of that series, the creator of that series, the One Step Beyond. Yeah, the host, creator, everything. He obviously had his penchant or his strength was in being able to visualize pictures with his through his hands, because he got 6 right, or very close to out of 8, which is pretty phenomenal.
First time without the use of the mushroom was just,
oh well, it was nothing.
It was dreadful, really, in reality.
So it's amazing how when they were going to the village, they were saying, oh, these primitive people, oh, they have no phones, they've never seen, they don't know radio, television, blah 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 blah, all of that sort of stuff. And of course, they were able to use the sacred mushroom, going to the brujo,
the shaman,
to actually, get answers to like who stole their donkey.
To keep some unity in the village.
It was like not a deterrent, but it was an investigative tool that they were using, which I think is quite fascinating.
Puharich
instead of people just taking it and getting out of it and having a good time.
No, there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye. And I think Puharich has travelled basically the four corners of the world, appears to have been quite robustly funded, always had people working for him, assisting him. And it looks to me as if he was being financed to weaponize these esoteric notions. Now, this is decades before remote viewing, decades before Terence McKenna's work, and probably one of the most founding pioneers of that research possible.
Sure.
But when it comes to weaponizing extraordinary esoteric abilities, there's always a sinister aspect.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
out of respect for his family, of which step family, brothers and sisters are still around, there is a great site by his son, Andy Puharich, and there is a documentary in the making. 40 minutes of that is up on YouTube for anyone to view.
So go
on to Andy Puharich, his site, but it's called Puharich Personal.
Right.
And you get testimonies from his children.
Yeah.
And of course, I said one of the daughters was so disinterested, didn't have any feelings for Yuri Geller.
Right.
She had trouble. One of the other daughters it was everything in the world to her. The son had skeptical moments until in the midst of it, and one of those sessions with the 9 in the 80s, they're at a certain, I'm not going to use a military term there, but they're at a certain location.
Oh, right, okay.
And it was stated that there was going to be a UFO appearance.
Right.
And for the first time ever, he sighted an incredibly large object with lots of lights, and so did everyone else there. So you can take Puharich for what it is, but please go and look at Puharich Personal and look at Andy's site.
You know, the kids, obviously, they have a big investment because this is their father.
But they also had moments where they were with their father and they weren't. Their father was absent. And
of course he would have been doing all that work.
His house was set on fire.
By?
And,
do they know?
I mean, he actually articulated to his daughter that he suspected it was a Central Intelligence Agency, and it might have had something to do with his patents.
Oh, right, okay, yes.
And there was a patent there that caused a lot of controversy that had to do with neurological nerve damage around hearing.
Yeah,
it was a hearing aid.
Yeah.
And he thought that patent was going into production. It has
He sold it to somebody. He sold it to some company, didn't he?
Yes.
So it was how was it? How did it work? Do you remember how it worked?
I don't.
No, okay, but so he was able to create a hearing aid that would bypass something or other and make people hear.
Yeah.
And he sold the patent to someone.
Yes.
To a company, and then that company actually shelved it.
And it was a very close figure of those. There was a huge family celebration about the sale of that. It was going to keep them financially, above water for quite some time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he came home one night with a black eye and articulated to his daughter that he'd had a fist fight with the person he'd sold it to because they were suppressing his patent and his product.
Wow.
So as you were saying, and I cut you off there, excuse me, the family, please.
Yeah.
The family, they had moments where he was in their life, moments where he was not in their life.
Yeah.
And they're unaware as to where he was.
Oh, of course.
And sometimes in Mexico, he would phone them up after years.
Yeah.
And they were quite surprised to even hear from him.
He did go to ground for a while, didn't he?
He disappeared many times. After that arson attack in the late 70s, he certainly disappeared off the registrar. But, you know, the incredible connections he had worldwide with people, the ability to take machinery and technicians into the most remote locations in the world.
Do tests.
They are certainly weaponized. And the hint there in the allegation that he was working in terms of MK Ultra, which we all know now, was the code name used for the search for control of the human mind.
Yeah, brainwashing.
Many ways that they were incorporating that. Now, in the midst of this research, I stumbled onto something very similar to the Candy Jones saga.
Oh, God. Here we go.
And it's quite frightening, and it's a very dark
now.
rabbit hole. But if you go up onto Google, and you should do it soon, I'm trying to actually download the entire site for ourselves. There is a page called Dark Secrets from the Faraday Cage. And it all has to do with a beautiful lass who was a psychic. So was her mother, and so was her sister.
Right.
That seem to have been extremely exploited by Andrija Puharich.
Okay.
Now, this is their allegations.
Right.
It's not ours.
No.
But at the same time, it rings consistently to many stories we've come across. So, Belitar Adar. Can you just you'll put the image up here.
Belitar, yeah.
Adar. I asked you to do that before.
Okay. Yeah.
And there we go. Okay, thank you for showing that, Aspasia.
Sorry. All right, okay.
There's a picture of her, a musical medium.
Right.
Belita. Is that
Belita.
it? Belita.
Belita, yeah.
Here's a notch. I can never pronounce it.
Whoa, she's hot.
Much nicer shot of her. Now, the interesting thing is the Faraday cage. Do you know about the Faraday cage?
Yes.
The Faraday cage is used to remove all electromagnetic transmissions. So
it's like an isolation chamber, isn't it?
He would do tests and virtually interrogations on people as early as the early 50s in Faraday cages.
Right.
Now, as you can remember in the last episode, we were talking to the MUFON director for Australia and New Zealand, Roger Stankovic.
Yep.
And Roger was talking to us about the conundrum that is Havana syndrome, which I thought was part of ELF. It was a pulsed microwave transmission that could basically go in and start to affect people neurologically.
Right.
But the research in the States is telling us it can't be that.
Yeah, right.
The weaponry is just way too sophisticated. It's called, is it weaponry?
So they don't have anything small enough to be able to get close enough to a subject and aim at
and pulse it to do
the damage.
Signs of things like what happens to the axons and the dendrites, the neurological, the grey matter and the white matter in the brain that is similar to Korsakoff syndrome, but rapid degeneration. So let's have a look at this day in 1977 where our lass, can you give me her name again? Belita?
Belita, yeah.
And there's Belita.
So that's her with Andrija
Puharich.
Yeah.
Now, in 1977, they believed in London that Puharich was getting ready to assist them, basically as their promoter, in a BBC interview on television.
Okay.
And they were asked to come at a certain time to his estate in London.
Right.
And so here's some images of Puharich with Belita. And this, I believe, is Puharich, distinctly in the 70s.
That's definitely him. Oh,
and
hello.
Very close relationship these two have got. That's Belita's mum going to the house.
Right.
She happened to have a stills camera that day, and these stills were recovered. Now, this is the person that presented as Puharich on that day.
Right.
Now, that does not look like Puharich,
No,
and they suspected that this person was someone else.
Yeah.
Here's another shot of that individual.
Right. Ooh, hello.
Yeah. And they're also shocked that he was there just in those swimming costume. And they actually were a bit disgusted.
Was there a pool?
I told you not to ask me questions.
No, I mean, why would you be wearing swimmers if there's no pool? But anyway, well, let me just rephrase that. I hope there was a pool.
All right. Now, this may be, and she suspects now that this was who was later identified as the unicorn killer.
Right.
Ira Einhorn. Now, if you want...
Einhorn, I think it is. Yeah,
okay, Einhorn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was called the unicorn killer.
Yeah.
Because his name in German means unicorn.
Okay.
The Einhorn. Yeah.
And it's very clouded around because evidently he had killed his girlfriend, put her in a trunk, and kept her in the closet for 18 months. Yeah. I don't know how that is possible.
Well,
and it was only in the last week or two that there was leakage from that trunk, which I would have thought that body would literally be mummified after 18 months.
Who knows? Depends on the conditions.
And it leaked into a neighbour's flat. They called the plumber, and then one thing led to another, and he was arrested as the unicorn killer, and evidently involved in the assassination of other ladies he had past relationships with. Wow. But take a good long look at that shot. That's the gentleman passing themselves off as Puharich on that day.
Yeah.
And what he did was take them straight into the Faraday cage.
Right.
And evidently, allegedly, directly after they got out of the cage, there was Puharich and not this gentleman.
Yeah, right.
Still passing himself off as Puharich. Here is a mugshot from around that time of our killer.
Well, the guy. Whoa. Okay.
Does that look similar to you?
That does look, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, got it.
You got it?
Yep, I've got it. That looks more like this guy than Puharich.
It really does.
Which is weird.
Well, it reminds me of the research
That's
of Dave
him.
McGowan
Yeah,
and
that's him,
Program to
yeah.
Kill, that they're playing these psychological games with people.
Psyops, yeah.
She has no love whatsoever for Puharich. She said that she was interrogated for hours. Her
Right.
mother and her sister were interrogated for hours.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized now that they were used as pawns
Right.
that's tragically affected their life
Right.
and given them post-traumatic stress disorder
Mm-hmm.
from the moment that this event occurred.
Yeah.
And that not only was Puharich searching for psychics with true ability,
Mm-hmm.
but he was also trying to see if those psychics could receive messages from the nine in a Faraday cage.
Right, okay.
And this is an interesting thing to me that is now actually becoming concurrent with the investigation stateside into Havana syndrome.
Yeah.
So a little potted, all over the place history
Sure.
of Andrija Puharich.
But that's because obviously that there's more to this guy than meets the eye.
Oh,
because it doesn't
never
add
stopped.
up. No, he never
stopped.
And he was behind. I mean, I always thought it was weird that this guy was always, if there was a psychic around that was being touted on the international stage, Puharich was part of it.
Yeah.
He was in the background. He was the one. It was almost like their controller.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
When it comes, and you know, we're all aware of the intelligence game.
Absolutely.
And it's people that seem to live this life, even though they're married or with children,
Well,
but they travel the world. They have connections to people in political, in industry.
For sure.
And all sorts of skullduggery appears to be going on.
Actually, somebody should make a documentary on this guy. He's just a fascinating
character.
His
family are, but again, it's more of a sanitized look from their
going to be from their perspective.
Yeah.
And if they find anything that's a little bit too weird, and do you think that they're going to dig into the dark stuff?
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Here's one of the last lectures he did, which I'd say was a message from the nine.
Right.
And this, in a way, too, if you go to the hoax documentary out of Britain, Alternative 3.
Oh, right, yes.
And what Puharich is here, these people were talking about climate change, global warming, decades before it was articulated in the public. So here, Puharich is talking, very briefly, we'll go to this, about the greenhouse effect.
Our speaker this evening is well known internationally, both as a researcher and an author. Most of you are familiar with him, and he will be speaking tonight concerning the greenhouse effect and its cure. I'd like you to welcome Dr. Andrija Puharich.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and distinguished colleagues and friends. It's a happy occasion to be here. I want to make a little announcement. Those of you who know about my work, I'm sure know that I never give the same speech twice. It's a rule with me. And I'm breaking the rule and giving this speech for the second time because of its nature. The other point I wish to make is, if you remember, I always give papers on my original research. I rarely give review lectures or review material. In this particular case, I'm working on a rather grand canvas, a big scale canvas, and therefore I am using other people's material, and I'm quoting people and using other people's photographs and so on. The title is given, lecture about the greenhouse effect, is a very important subject to me, and I sometimes think to myself, I wonder if what we're really doing, that is myself, you as individuals and others, is really in tune with the times, because these are not ordinary times. And maybe what I'm going to talk about may influence what you do if you accept what I'm going to say. As you know, for the last 30 years or so, perhaps a little longer, there's been a lot of discussion about the so-called greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect means that there is a buildup of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to the extent that it leads to sunlight being trapped inside the atmosphere. That is, the heat from the sun does not re-radiate and escape. And therefore it's called the greenhouse effect, the same kind of thing you get in a greenhouse. Now this might seem inconsequential unless you know the consequences of a greenhouse effect. First, let me point out to those who like numbers, there's something like 3 times 10 to the 9th power kilograms of CO2, carbon dioxide, in the atmosphere. And because of the strange homeostatic mechanisms of the Earth, this is pretty constant. Measurements have been taken repeatedly by many scientists, by aircraft, by rocket sondes, that show that there is a slow but gradual buildup of the carbon dioxide in the air. Fact is, I would say that in the 3 or 4 major international scientific journals that I read every week, there's at least 1 or 2 articles these days about the greenhouse effect. It has become a matter of great concern. Now, the reason it's become a matter of great concern is we've had very, very unusual weather on this planet, as you all know. Fact is, there's a runaway effect. Some of you may not have been at the lecture, but I gave to me what was to me a rather important lecture several years ago, July of '82, in which I put my neck on the line and said quite clearly, and backed it up with a lot of evidence, that in the next 2 years, that is in '83 and '84, there would be an enormous increase of what I call mini floods all over the planet. And mini floods always bring about drought. That is, one part of the earth gets too much water and the other parts don't get enough. So you have both mini floods and you have droughts. And if you follow the newspaper at all, there isn't a country in the world, or a state in the United States for that matter, that has escaped what I...
Okay. Isn't that fascinating? That's nearly 4 decades ago.
That is, yeah.
And
well, that is 4 decades ago.
Now, is this what the 9 had told him to go out and talk to humanity about?
He had a finger in every pie, didn't he, this guy? Seriously.
He certainly did. And, you know, the interesting thing here is seeing these predictive moments in pop culture. I mean, recently we played that small piece of Philip K. Dick at the French Science Fiction Convention in the late 70s, talking about the fact that he felt he was part of a simulation, and that simulation was glitching and he could actually see things repeated. Now we're seeing the same thing here with Puharich, but Puharich was everywhere, doing everything. One thing we can be assured of is that his background was covert military.
Absolutely.
And that he was stepping into the world of the parapsychological to quite possibly weaponize it. He also stepped onto the world stage through film, television, media, radio, to actually gather up the most fascinating, interesting people that showed
these abilities.
Psychic abilities.
Absolutely.
Now, recently, Doug and Alex had on their Untold radio show, they had Ron Moorhead, the psychic warrior. And it's just fascinating. By the 70s, when Puharich had been going strong since the 40s, that all of a sudden, you know, they start to weaponize and take seriously the work of Indigo Swan and the remote viewers, which is very similar and sort of a carry-on from the experiments of Puharich.
Psychic abilities.
Now, it is really important that you go and look at the kids' site there, look at the documentary Puharich Personal, Andy Puharich's YouTube site. Go and look. There's lots of lecture material out there. There's lots of papers on Puharich. But as you stated before, I think one of the biggest gaps, and it always surprises me with these complex, fascinating tapestries of extraordinary narratives, where is the definitive documentary?
Well, there isn't one.
Where is the definitive documentary on Philip K. Dick? Where is the definitive documentary on Puharich? Where is the definitive documentary on Yuri Geller? They're just not there, are they?
No.
And
no,
it's
not.
their absence that makes them so intriguing.
Absolutely.
So a little bit of a history lesson. I hope you've enjoyed that. Go and search out that One Step Beyond series. The other episodes are so worthwhile. But the sacred mushroom is astounding. And for our people really fascinated by that parallel hominid, Night of the Kill is the episode that reeks its debut on television.
Yeah.
You have been on Untold Radio.
Down South Anomalies.
My name's Jay Katz. It's really Jamie Leonardo because you're my wife, Aspasia Leonardo.
Yeah.
And I love you deeply. And tomorrow you'd leave me for 10 days.
No,
go.
I'm already on the cruise.
You've already left, have you?
I'm on the cruise.
You're going hopping. Now, you're going to film some stuff for us this time.
I'm going to
hold you to
I'm
that.
going to try.
Have you got Mystery Island? Is that...
We're supposed to go to Mystery Island again.
Hopefully the weather will be okay.
Hopefully the weather, the conditions for us getting off the cruise ship and onto the island are going to be much better than they were in March.
Yeah.
Because if the conditions are not right, they won't let you get off because it's just too dangerous. Getting off the ship onto the tender, it's just not worth it. So, but I am dying to go, and I'm going to go.
That word,
I am excited to go to Mystery Island because that's where they filmed the Blue Lagoon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
you can do a shot of yourself in a bikini at the Blue.
No, you don't get a bikini in a bikini. I'm sorry, I'm too old for that sort of stuff. But that's where
Brooke Shields.
Yeah, Brooke Shields and Christopher Atkins.
Now that film would probably be cancelled the moment it was green lit today.
Are you serious? Like Brooke was like 14 or something, and they were trying to get them to do all sorts of.
So you're going there. Look, the one thing I'm going to hold you to is that I can't live without you.
Yeah.
And, 10 days is just going to break my heart.
It's actually 9, but
you've got to come back better than ever.
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
I always come back.
What do you mean by I'm gone?
Well, you'll be gone when I get back.
Well, yeah, I've got to go up to Lithgow and work.
You do.
Yeah.
Someone's got to pay for these trips.
Now, listen, before we leave today, it's important that we look at the promo front.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
We all should be ready for an enhanced experience. And now, after playing that promo a few times, I'm really beginning to settle into getting that wallpaper. I could certainly wake up to that. You know what I mean? Screaming.
Fair enough.
I love that moment recently where they were talking about they had some activity on the remote location for Legend Meets Science 2. And they didn't go to the windows. They were too scared.
What
They
is that?
They didn't go to the windows of the
I
door.
would be I wouldn't have curtains on the windows.
I'd be diving straight through the sheet
I would
glass.
be looking out that window to look at these things. I would be eyeballing them.
Yeah,
seriously.
You just don't know till you're in the field. And that fear factor
I know.
is a huge amount of stuff to get over.
Yeah. But you know what? It's like, why would you go to all that trouble? And they're out there, they're throwing stones and all kinds of things, and they're banging on underneath the wall. I'd be looking out the window. I'd be going, okay, there you are.
Yeah.
I've just eyeballed you.
There's a brand new podcast up.
Yes, there is.
And that podcast
fascinating. I loved it.
It's
it was
brilliant.
great. It was
I can't remember the name of the host at the moment, but he's exceptional.
It was fabulous.
And it's all about utilizing science, but primarily it's about getting over that flight or fright response.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's really worth looking at. I think that's Monday nights in the US, Tuesday for us.
It was great. And I'm going to listen to the second one too because I wanted
to. Sunday for us here.
It tells you, he was going to tell you how to not poop yourself when you come across
that's
a Bigfoot,
important.
which is a fair enough thing. I mean, this thing is taking you way out of your comfort zone.
Oh, yeah.
It's taking you way out into, I don't know, no man's land. And when you see something like that, even though you know it's there and you're chasing it, you're looking for it, when you actually come face to face with it,
it's big and hairy and it's out there. And it reminds me of what's going to happen when we get to Greece. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
Okay.
Just a little